The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Blessed evening to all of you who are here, and also those fellow worshippers in other parts of the world joining us through the worship through this live stream. One of the great mysteries of life and relationship with God is the experience of God's calling. And we realize how profound and mysterious God's ways, that beyond our expectations, human expectations, God calls those whom He likes to call. And it's so difficult to explain. In our own experiences of being called, no, I personally, or probably my own conference here, the experience of being called is indeed an experience of profound mercy of God. The mystery of God's calling. And especially as we look at the experiences of calling in the Bible, like in the case of the saint whose feast we celebrate today, Saint Matthew, a tax collector, considered as one of the worst sinners in the society, in the Jewish society at that time, because they were considered as collaborators of the occupying forces. They collaborated in collecting taxes, which of course made miserable the life of their countrymen and women. But God called him, this so-called worst of sinners, to be his disciple. And another thing that we notice in this, in the calling of these disciples, like Matthew, that God, Jesus, for example, we see how this person moved from in the journey of conversion, but we notice that the good things, the good characteristics, the giftedness of that person is maintained. Just like Matthew, a good tax collector, and he will be considered precisely as one of the a great scribe, a collector of the stories of Jesus, of his of what he taught, and arranged them in an orderly manner. What we have now, the Gospel of Matthew. No. One of the most systematic collection of the stories of Jesus. Probably because he was a good collector, he collected also these stories, diverse stories about Jesus, and formed them into a beautiful story of Jesus and his teachings. So his giftedness as a person, as a professional, was not erased when he was called by Jesus. And this is also true in our calling as Christians, that when God has called us to participate in his mission, that he counts our giftedness And it is so marvelous to see, for example, the giftedness of Christians being placed at the service of the mission of the church. Now, I do not know if you have read that many of the, like for example, the science of genetics, the great was the one who discovered this was a Catholic priest, no, for example, and many other things about science, no, knowledge, no, at the service of humanity. In other words, God, when He calls us so that we may grow and may we use our giftedness at the service of the kingdom, His kingdom. And we see how Matthew, for example, emerges his concern, his point of view in collecting this. For example, the orderly presentation of his gospel in forms of discourses, now about the parables of the kingdom, about the Sermon of the Mount, on the Mount, about the Beatitudes, the joy of the gospel, the joy of being forgiven, the joy of being called, and many others. Dear friends, as we celebrate the feast of Saint Matthew, we are reminded again of our giftedness. Do not tell God that you do not have anything to contribute for the glory of God, because that would be an insult to His creativity and generosity. Each one has received certainly gifts that can be used at the service of His kingdom. The gift of words, for example, for teachers, the gift of kindness, the gift of motherhood, of fatherhood, the gift of our own professions, and many other things now can be placed at the service of God. May Saint Matthew help us and intercede for us that we may come to a greater appreciation of our giftedness and use these for the greater glory